Living in a hostile culture, how can we be able to agree to disagree? You've seen the talk shows. Guest A argues with guest B, or host 1 gets into a heated debate with host 2. It's become today's norm when we look at television to see two people arguing profusely to get their point across. Some people thrive on this. They love the argumentative showdown. The more hostility, the better. It feeds their cravings to be in a verbal battle to see if they can win at all costs. I don't know about you, but I'm just not one of those people. I do not get excited at the opportunity to jump into a verbal tussle. I'd rather have peace and simply talk with you. Now, don't get me wrong, I have been guilty a time or two with being triggered to engage in a yell match. Trust me, when it was all said and done, I've regretted every moment of it. I hate that feeling. It does nothing to edify me or solve anything for that matter. Yet, some people still ascribe to this behavior because they don't know any other way. Maybe this type of communication was modeled to them in their households growing up, so they've taken on this mantle as normal behavior and applied it to most situations that involve conflict or difference. Maybe they've cultivated this can't tell me nothing stance as they've been out in the world trying to make it in hostile environments such as the military or some other setting where they've had to watch out for themselves. Whatever the case is, there are some people who simply feel more comfortable always being on the verbal defense with a great deal of hostility. While some thrive on hostile confrontation, others, I would gather to say, do not like conflict or having to engage in confrontation. In fact, it is most likely that these people shrink up and actually avoid conflict. Yet, little do they know, or maybe they do and they refuse to change it, that the conflict is still there ruminating, particularly on the inside, as inner conflict grows and festers into other passive-aggressive behaviors with the offender. Neither way, in my opinion, is the right way, the hostile yeller or the avoidant. So, how can we personally develop a passionate calmness to have and articulate a difference of opinion without losing it and becoming hostile? Which, by the way, recognizing that you're being hostile is the first step towards overcoming this barrier. Some people just refuse to admit that they're coming across as hostile. You've heard the rebuttals. Angry? Who's angry? I'm not angry, as they say in their Incredible Hulk voice. How can we express our inner offense or difference without attacking the other person we are interacting with? I would like to take the 3-step approach to offer up some solutions. While this list is in no way exhaustive, it is a start for those who are truly seeking to cultivate a less hostile environment within conflict resolution. Step number 1. Find your late night DJ voice and will your way to use it. Oh boy. This one is probably the catalyst for the other 2 items I'll mention. If you don't know what a late night DJ voice is, turn on the local radio station after 11 p.m. and listen to the disc jockey's tone, volume, and pace of voice. It's soothing, it's calming, and it's also clear as the night. They're not in a rush to offload a ton of information. Their pace is thoughtful and concise. They put the listener in a reflective mode and instantly cause them to relax and intake. This is the first barrier to entry when cultivating communication that may be opposing. Secondly, in addition to your late night DJ voice, I would say work on your vocabulary and self-awareness. You can listen to my other podcasts on self-awareness to learn more about that. But the more that you find what it is that is truly bothering you or causing you to trip up in a situation, the more you can effectively communicate that to the other individual. Now, I also mentioned working on your vocabulary, because the wider your repertoire is of the Oxford vernacular, the closer you get to closing the gap and pinpointing the exact word or set of words that match the feeling you are trying to express. This truly does help create a less hostile engagement because words hurt, despite what the sticks and stones say. And the more you express accurate depictions of how you feel using a wider array of words besides the easy cop-out of cuss words and the like, the greater you are to accomplishing what you really want, and that is having the other person truly know how you feel. I tend to think your true feelings get lost in the cultural blunders of cuss words and colloquialisms. When you can articulately express yourself in a manner that does not utilize these language art forms, that's when you've truly begun to win. But who's trying to win an argument anyways, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the main event of the evening. Are you ready?
Just kidding. Finally, the third component to this is removing assumption by giving the other person the consideration of well-meaning intent. Now, I know this one is probably the hardest of them all to do because some people are just awful. They're just mean-spirited and nasty-natured. So this one will require a large dose of vulnerability and humility. You're going to have to swallow that pride in order to effectively engage in this one. I read a book by Brene Brown called Rising Strong, and in it she mentions a story of a time when she and her husband went swimming in a lake. I'll paraphrase the story for time purposes. She states that when they were at the lake, she felt like her husband didn't recognize that she was trying to have a loving moment of connection with him in the water. She was upset because her husband did not respond to her the way that she'd like. She then confronted her husband about it, accusing him of not being loving. After he explained to her that he was fighting a panic attack in the water and wasn't trying to maliciously brush her off, she then realized that there was a different way she could have handled the situation. Instead of taking the attack method, she could have used a different approach. She calls this approach the story that I'm making up, or the story that I've created is, and then she fills in the blank after that. This approach not only dismantles a person coming across as attacking, but it opens the door for quicker and more intimate engagement with the other person. It gets you closer to resolution and many times faster too. Again, this approach is difficult because it requires a level of maturity, poise, and resolve to say, you know what, let me not be quick to condemn, but let me be slow to wrath. Let me serve the other person with consideration and discard the hostility. Even if that person disagrees with you, at the very least, you've done your part in effectively communicating your true feelings. Conflict is tough. Heck, simple communication is even tougher. But we don't have to go about it in a hostile way. We don't have to get our panties in a wad and create an unnecessarily combative society where we sensationalize every bit of our communication with each other. We can all do our part with creating a less hostile culture when we learn to effectively communicate with one another. Some people refuse to admit or see the contradiction in their argument even when you've clearly pointed it out to them. I believe they refuse to do this because admitting what they said earlier that opposes what they just said makes them appear wrong or found out. Like, aha, gotcha. These people do not like to be discovered in this way, so they use verbal gymnastics to weasel their way out of a corner in efforts to clarify what they're trying to say. A solid and secure individual who is in conversation with a person like this will first recognize this trait in the other person and then gracefully concede the matter at hand because they know trying to get the other person to recognize the contradiction is futile and a waste of words, energy, and time. When there is a tough topic at hand, we can still go about it with a calm resolve by presenting our views and stances on the matter, even if the other vehemently disagrees. We can simply agree to disagree and move on. No need to belabor the point and try and combatively convince the other to see things your way. Simply tap out like the WWF wrestlers and exit the ring with your dignity intact. No need to fight useless battles with keyboard ninjas. No need to clap back on social media for the sake of setting the record straight. While I don't really talk about politics or endorse any politicians on this podcast, I'll say this. Like Michelle Obama says, when they go low, you go high. For more content and to download copies of my ebooks, go to simplelifeconversations.blog. That's simplelifeconversations.blog. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast channel to get the latest episode of Conversation Starters.